right, it looks like we are live. Thanks everybody for joining us today. You are with the OpenJS Foundation monthly Q&A session with WebDriver. Every month we like to sit down with a project and see what they've got going on. And this one is going to be a real fun one. We've got some fun announcements coming up. Before I hand it over to Christian, who will be our moderator today, if you have questions that you would like to ask, please feel free to submit them either in the YouTube chat or you can at us on Twitter. So OpenJSF on Twitter. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Christian, who will introduce our panelists for today.
Thank you, Rachel. Thanks for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this AMA. I'm excited to share the stage with some of our core contributors who will all introduce themselves. I'm going to start with myself. I'm Christian. I'm working as a software engineer in the open source program office at Source Labs, where I oversee how the company is using open source software as well as distributing it. And as the WebDriver protocol and the WebdriverIO project is a tool that a lot of our customers use. I'm part of my work is also to contribute to the project as part of my company work. And I got introduced to this project way back when I was in high school, or actually college, where I had to test a backbone application in the browser. And back then I didn't know how you would do there was the first time where a single page application were a thing, and I thought the best way to test it is to click it through it. And back then, I think WebdriverJS was the project name before we called it WebdriverIO. I used WebdriverJS to do this automation thing, and I started contributing to the project as I needed more features. And since then, I stick with learning, contributing to the project, learning a lot, not only about Node.js and software engineering in general, but also about open source. And today I'm excited that this project has gotten to the size where it is right now, and hopefully even bigger in the future. So I give it up to Wim.
Yeah, thanks, Christian. My name is Wim Selles, live in the Netherlands. I also work at Source Labs as a senior solutions architect. And I got involved working with WebdriverIO, I think, 2017 or something, when I needed to automate a React Native application. And I was always used to working with Angular applications using Protector. And in this case, I needed to automate a native application. And after doing some research, I figured out that WebdriverIO could basically do it all, and the web and native applications. And started using it, and after using it, started helping out with questions also in the Gitter channel. Met a lot of people, learned a lot, and also got in contact with Christian then. I thought, okay, let's start contributing. Let's start not only helping people in the Gitter channel, which is, in my opinion, also something as contributing to open source, but also adding or helping with features, bug fixes, that kind of stuff. So that's basically how I got involved also in the WebdriverIO project. So let's get the mic to Kevin.
Hey, I'm Kevin, and I am a front-end engineer. I work in the consulting field, helping companies with their front-end projects. A large part of that is helping with testing the front-end using WebdriverIO. I got involved with the project 5 or 6 years ago, maybe more than that, when I was trying to figure out how to unit test CSS, kind of the design of the sites, and became familiar with WebDriver CSS, which is a defunct product or plugin to WebdriverIO. Through there, I discovered WebdriverIO and test automation, and kind of really fell in love with the project and all it was working on and the goals of it and how it was being run and all of that. So I've been working with the project for several years now. I was able to make a course on it, a video course on it, which is now a bit out of date. So, but I've also been able to get a book out there on testing websites with WebdriverIO, and am working on turning that book into a second video course on WebdriverIO automation. I'll turn it over to Erwin.
Hi everyone, I'm Erin. I'm also living in the Netherlands. I got introduced to WebdriverIO about 5 years ago when I was doing some automation, and I was using chimp.js back then, which is a wrapper for WebdriverIO. And I didn't know back then that it used WebdriverIO under the hood. And later on, I learned this and I thought, like, let's try to use WebdriverIO as my main tool. And I got on Gitter, saw many people asking questions. And I noticed that back in the day, I felt like I had little knowledge, but I noticed that I could answer a lot of these questions, which got me more confident into exploring more and more of WebdriverIO, which got me further into the project as we went along, contributing and making my way into the core team eventually. I'm currently working as a test engineer at the Testers in the Netherlands. And yeah, that's my role currently.
Awesome. Thank you all. Before we dive into the question, we thought it would be good to start with the announcement that we have promised on Twitter. So over the last month, we were thinking about how we can, continue and accelerate the development of the project. And one opportunity that also many open source projects use is, especially when they grow and as they grow, is they start a collective. And so we thought it would be a good idea to do that as well, to help not only development of the project, but also help to grow the community. And so with today, we're going to open up a collective on Open Collective, where you and your company, if you use WebdriverIO in your company, can donate to the project. And we really want to make this as transparent and open as possible. We currently have 3 tiers. They're pretty standard, usually where you can, do a one-time donation. You can become a regular, contributor, starting with $2 or whatever you feel like contributing to it. Or if your company is heavily using WebdriverIO, then you can become a gold sponsor, where we're going to put the company logo on into our community section on the website, as well as on our README, and as well provide like a weekly 1-hour support sync with one of our core project maintainers. So this will, of course, a little bit more expensive, but we will provide some services for that on top of just donating money, right? And again, we want to be this as expensive as transparent as possible, and therefore we created clear expense policies for everyone to understand when they can, reimburse something from the collective. And there are really 3 types here. Our first idea actually was what I had in mind is, hey, we want to have more WebdriverIO events around the world. So for everyone who has a webinar, a meetup, or a workshop on WebdriverIO, why shouldn't we just use the funds in the collective to reimburse with pizza, with rental, to reimburse rental costs or food or any kind of things. And so one of the first expenses that you can expense is, event expenses, up to $100. It's not much, but it can pay for a couple of pizzas when you run a meetup for WebdriverIO. Then there will be development expenses. So if you are contributing to WebdriverIO, you can contribute to issues that are labeled with expensible. And the idea behind this is, if you have fixed or contributed to 10 issues that are marked as expensible, then you can get reimbursed up to $1,000. And we have done that this way because we think, there will be some tickets that, people can solve in 2 or 3 hours, and some other tickets will take longer. And by, collecting 10 of them, we'll kind of level it out. And if you do additional one, you will get $100 per ticket. So it's essentially per expensible ticket that you fix, you can reimburse get $100 reimbursed if the money is if there's enough money in the collective. The idea here is, we don't want to. It's difficult with these open collectives and these things in the open source world. It's hard to make it fair. We try to make this really transparent and really be able to connect every expense that we do from the collective to the work that has been done on the project. And therefore, we certainly know that this won't cover someone working full-time on WebdriverIO, but it will help people that contribute in their free time and spend their free labor to the project to get them reimbursed at least some money. And the last will be travel expenses for the technical steering committee. I think there haven't been many of those kind of travel expenses. Usually you will get paid if you decide to speak at the event. In case that that is not the case, this fund should be available for the core contributors to expense every flight or hotel accommodation. And it should be some sort of also an incentive for people to think about, hey, if I contribute more to the project, there are rules that clearly state at what point you become a technical steering committee member. And so we hope that we can, in the future, get more people on board, more people become part of the core contributor group, more to increase diversity, get more people on board, and have more constant contributions to the project. Originally, the idea was also to not only open the collective, but also open the Swag store. So we were talking with the OpenJS Foundation about this because WebdriverIO as a project is trademarked by the OpenJS Foundation. So if you ever think about opening some sort of Swag store, this is something you should clearly communicate with the foundation first. So as project members, we asked for permission, and we got permission for that to create our first Swag store. You can reach that shop or that store on shop.webdriver.io. It will redirect you to a threadless shop because this is for us the most simplest way to give you access to that kind of Swag store. And currently we currently start with this little design that came from a friend of mine. But apparently Irvin mentioned that he was a designer in his past. So I think I'm pretty sure that in the future we will add more designs to the shop. So currently you have a t-shirt and sweatshirt. I already got the sweatshirt for myself that has not arrived yet, but soon will. We will have some stickers, a notebook, and a beach towel, which I also ordered from the store. And so all the purchases that we made in the store will directly go into the collective. And then eventually to the event that you host, where you want to order pizza for the people that attend the event. So really, this collective is not really about having someone working full time on WebdriverIO, but being able to give back the community and allow people to get some money while contributing to the project. That's about the announcement. Any comments from you all?
No, just very excited.
Yeah, hopefully we will get some t-shirt designs from you soon. Awesome. Well, let's dive into the questions then. Let's think about, we had a couple of questions that I think we wanted to go first. And so let's just say, how about the one about jest? So let's say, so Sean asked, why doesn't WebdriverIO support jest? Any comments?
From what I believe, you did the research actually behind this, Christian, a while back. And I believe there were some difficulties with the things added on top of Jasmine, which we currently already use. And also the things that Jest adds to the project are more valuable for a project that does unit testing than it's actually useful for end-to-end testing, which is why we chose not to do that migration at that moment in time. Is that correct?
Yeah. I looked into the Jest test runner, and I feel like Jest is I use Jest for all my projects, but for unit testing purposes. They have a nice feature on doing snapshots and doing comparisons using the expect library. I love all this, but from the test runner perspective, there's nothing really that adds value to WebdriverIO that is not already covered in the Mocker or Jasmine framework if you do BDD testing or TDD testing. So right now, there was no reason to add jest as a test runner. What you can do is just use the Mocker framework and use the expect WebdriverIO library that comes automatically shipped with every install. And your test will exactly look like jest test. You have the same syntax with the expect statement or expect function. And we even, thanks to Mikola, who is also a core contributor to the project, we even have like a expect library, assertion library for WebdriverIO objects, which makes it easier to assert certain elements on the page. So I don't think moving on that we will have some sort of a jest framework. I think that doesn't really provide that much value, but we try to improve our functionalities on the assertion side, extending the expect WebdriverIO assertion library to be able to do more things, like maybe network snapshots, things like that. We'll see. But yeah, for now, I don't think jest would be any valuable addition.
And I think to add to that is also that it's not included in the base sync project, basically, but it is possible to run jest when you run it as a standalone setup.
Correct. You had a project about that, right, Evan?
Yeah. Yeah, it has many upvotes because people just like to use jest a lot. So if you want, you can check this out. And yeah, it is very possible to run jest with WebdriverIO, but it's not included in the way that we use WebdriverIO by default. Yeah.
Yeah, using the WebdriverIO native frameworks like currently Mocker, Jasmine, and Cucumber really helps because it you can run jobs in parallel automatically rather than implementing that yourself. And there, with the reporters that all come from that, I think it's easier to use the common or native embedded frameworks. So another question from Wafa is, I would like to contribute to WebdriverIO knowing that I am a QA with no dev background. Would that be possible? Absolutely. So we have a lot of ways you can contribute. Even if you're not a developer, you can contribute. I think there are ways how you can look into the documentation to improve that. We offer the open source office hours. So there's one blog post about this. I can share my screen again. Let's see. So we have a blog post about the open office hours. I think we should make it a general page where you can go. And so this blocks time on our schedules, and you can decide to, just pick a ticket from the issue list and that you would like to tackle, and then put this ticket into the link, into this form. And then, one of us will help you and guide you through the contribution process. And, you don't need to be very technical. I think there are tickets out there that are really easy to tackle. And if not, I think just reach us and we can find things to be worked on. And that's always a different difficulty, right? As a contributor, you try to solve a lot of and fix a lot of issues, but there would be work for a project manager that helps us to carve out tickets, to give tickets more context, to make it easier for people to contribute.
I think that's already a good. Oh, sorry. I think that's already a good point that you're mentioning there, Christian. Even by kind of like triaging the tickets, that would already help. And I think also by basically just helping everybody on the Gitter channel. I think you don't need to have a lot of coding experience, but kind of like common sense. Why would you want to test certain situations? And I think also when you don't have that technical background, you think about something in a different way. And that also might lead to different conversations, good conversations also in the Gitter channel. So that's also a way, in my opinion, how you could contribute also to the project, just helping your peers.
Yeah, definitely. For me, actually, that's how I started. Sorry, Kevin.
It's Zoom. It's perfect. Oh, keep going.
All right. Now, that's how I actually started. I came to the GitHub channel, and I saw that I could actually answer more questions than I was asking them, which got me the confidence to take the next step, basically. And I think that when you take that next step and you do like a very small pull request to change a little, maybe it's just documentation, for example, it will bring that confidence that you can actually make a very small change very fast. And we can help you with that. So.
Yep, just wanted to reiterate what's already been said. Like, there's many different ways to help outside of contributing code. Myself, I've contributed like a small percentage of all the work that I've done has been just actual code changes. It's been a lot around documentation. The documentation can always use improvements. If you see a spot where maybe you just need examples, more examples. We have a lot of great documentation on commands and the parameters they take and everything, but one thing that's always helpful for me is seeing actual examples of the code in practice. So that's a great place to add contributions. And yeah.
That's a good point. That reminds me that we just started a repository on recipes. So successful automation recipes with WebdriverIO. There's a recipe repository on the organization on GitHub, and everyone who has like a script that they usually use a lot for certain automation types, like drag and drop or something fancy, I don't know, just put this in the repo. There's no structure yet, so feel free to just suggest something. But the idea is that everyone who has like a cool nifty snippet to automate something with WebdriverIO, contribute that as well and help people out. And yeah, again, to reiterate, the GitHub channel help people there to with their problems is also always a good way to get started. And I hope that never is like afraid to do any contributions because they think, what will people think about me? I think we are here to help, and we want to make this experience as good as possible. Let's take a question from the live audience. There's one from Hugh McCampbell. Hello all, will it be possible in the future to mock responses to the Selenium grid? Since I've been working on this recently, I can say yes, someone contributed a change that allows us to attach the Puppeteer side of things to the Selenium grid. So the new Selenium 4 grid will allow to access the DevTools protocol through the grid. So you have a lot of machines in your network, and the grid will be responsible to channel these WebSocket messages from the computer that runs the test to the remote machine. And it has been implemented. And so if you start Selenium 4 now with the latest version, it should already work. If not, create a bug. And on that note, a big shout out to our friends of the Selenium project that have done a really great work on making this possible and working on the Selenium 4 grid. And I hope, and I'm sure that the Selenium 4 release is right around the corner. So looking forward to that. Anyone else want to take the next question?
Yeah, I saw a question from Nemanja about I've been using WebdriverIO for more than 2 years, and we use it for different frameworks. And what are your thoughts on using WebdriverIO for mobile apps? And can you see it overtake Java-based frameworks for mobile testing? Well, that's kind of like my question, because I love mobile, and secondly, I'm not the biggest fan of Java, but that's more my thing. But I think, yeah, I've been working now with WebdriverIO for since 2017. I think it's a really powerful framework, especially that you can automate both. You can basically what you've done on the web, especially when you've got hybrid applications, you can do the same thing also in your hybrid application on your mobile phone. There are tons of options to execute test cases. If we would only look at Appium itself, Appium is based on Node.js. So yeah, why wouldn't you do it? Why would you use a different language to automate, for example, also a native application which has been written with, for example, a React Native, which is JavaScript based, or with NativeScript. So yeah, I think that WebdriverIO is really powerful in kind of like automating almost everything. So yeah, I would say go for it.
Nice. Let's take another question from our live audience. From Rush. Hi, everyone. Are you guys planning on adding any course on Udemy, Udemy Course era, where one of you is teaching WebdriverIO, Cucumber, and Mocker framework from scratch? Maybe Kevin, you can take this.
Yeah, can you bring up the page you shared the other day of the resources? And
Sure thing. 1 second.
Yeah, I actually tried responding in YouTube chat with that, but it flagged me as spam because I'm sharing links in YouTube chat and it doesn't like that. Yeah, there are several courses out there, a lot of great courses on automation with WebdriverIO. You see I'm on there. That course is, like I mentioned, it's under development, being rebuilt, and but it will only cover Mocha. It won't cover Cucumber because that's I had to focus on, I have limited time, so I had to focus on a specific technology and kind of limit the scope. But yeah, take a look at that list of courses. I believe at least one of those is on Udemy. There are a few of them on YouTube itself, and then another one through the Applitools Test Automation U website. So several of those are free to watch, and then if you have a Udemy subscription, I don't know if you get it for free or not. My course isn't going to be on Udemy. It'll be on a private platform that I've had a lot of success with. But yeah, take a look there, and meetup talks. There's a lot of people are doing great work posting things to YouTube, tutorials and everything out there. So keep searching on YouTube. That's a great spot for it. dev.to is another site that has had a lot of posts to it. I think you just search WebdriverIO. It'll be on there. Yeah, there you go. A lot of great resources out there, much more than in the past. So
yeah, thank you for everyone who has posted a video course or has done a conference or meetup talk. Again, when speaking about contributing to the projects, teaching people how to use WebdriverIO is always one way of contributing to it.
I should say translations are also quite welcome.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. We tried, and I think we are for German, since that's my mother tongue, and for Spanish, which was Barry was speaking, who was one of the project committers. We are like 35% for those two languages. It would be amazing to have have some more translations, or any translation at all. I will hopefully have more time in the future. You can find the translation platform if you check out the pull requests. And we're using Crowdin, and there's no link to it, unfortunately. I will dig this up and we'll make sure that there's a link to the translation, but there's a Crowdin page to contribute to WebdriverIO with translation in different kind of languages. And it would be great to have some different languages for it.
And this is something that the Open Collective will sponsor as well, right?
Yeah, there was a policy suggestion on that. I think I wasn't really sure, how we exactly nail amount of money down to what kind of translation. So we have to think about that and amend and add this to the collective as an expense policy. That would be great. So yeah, let's check out the questions.
I would like to answer Omar's question if you
go for it.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's the same person from the question that we have in our overview, but I see two questions. One is that what is the best way to categorize test suites like smoke sanity checks? We actually have a suite option which you can pass to the CLI or through the config that you configure. And we also allow you to use multiple configuration files which you can pass. So there's two options that you can use. You can define different suites which can run independently, or you could actually use two configuration files or multiple configuration files for different different configurations if you would like to. So I think those are two good ways to do that. And I would like to go straight into the other questions that I saw with the same name. How can we achieve a good end-to-end test suite that we can run after any deployment? I think the most important thing here is a good architecture to do your research on what you need. What are your requirements for the tool you're testing? Is this a web app? Is this going to be on mobile? So first get your requirements straight, then pick the right tool for it. And then if you have all your requirements on paper, basically, then you can come up with a good architecture to make it maintainable, reliable, scalable, etc. So I think that's the main part where you can create good, confident, reliable setups.
Erin, maybe something to add on top of that. It's not only the technical setup. It's also kind of like thinking about your test cases. Which test case makes value, real value for my customer? And just to have try to come up with a simple example. If you look at a web shop and you look, for example, at the order process, then being able to select a new jeans, then also pay the jeans might be more important and have more value than being able to adjust your username when you're on the platform. So just think about what test cases are really valuable and add those test cases also to those sanity checks. If they are broken, that will hurt you the most on production. It will cost you money. Please put them at least in those sanity checks.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing I would say is to keep it simple. If you're writing custom code to get your stuff going, I would say question yourself if it's really something you need to do. Is this workaround really needed, or is this complexity really needed? And another thing would be that see if you can move your logic or the logic that you're testing to a different place in the pyramid, basically. So can you do these tests in unit tests, for example? Oftentimes we see labels being checked, for example, error messages when you remove the input of an input field. These things can very easily be tested with unit tests, which takes milliseconds instead of seconds to actually spin up a real browser. So I think if you're wise about what you're actually testing and what layer of the test pyramid, for example, then this will provide you a lot of confidence in the way you create your layers. And yes, some more questions. Can I just answer them all? There's two more, but that's okay with you. I would like to continue. Yeah. Then what's the best practice to have global variables across the framework? I know of two ways. One is to create, well, actually three environment variables. You can define an object in the global scope and put your variables in that one object so you don't pollute the rest of the global scope. And another way is that we have a service actually for this, and I forgot the full name for it, but there's a store that we have that you can actually install, in which you can put these variables and you can share them between your specs actually. So that's another one.
Yeah, and also in addition to that one, I would always try to ask myself, what do I want to share between my test cases? Because if you make test cases depending on the state of the previous test case, you're basically on the way for getting flaky test cases. Because if one test case fails and the outcome was not there, then your second test case would also fail. So yeah, also try to think of, do I really need to share scopes between test cases?
Yeah, that actually gets back to the previous point. Don't keep state. And the last one is where should we store password and username, like credentials? And I think for this, environment variables are always a good option. Whether it's in an environment file or in your pipeline, at least some place where your this stuff is not exposed, at least. So these were all the questions.
I can take another one. It asks, Gabriel asked, how to best test accessibility with WebdriverIO. I specifically jumped on this one because I've looked at this before. There is a automation tool for testing web accessibility called Axe, A-X-E. And actually, before I get into that, I want to caveat that with, you can't fully test accessibility with just automation. It has to involve manual testing. You have to, it's accessibility is nuanced in what is accessible, and so much that a computer really won't be able to know whether something is accessible. There are certain instances where it's kind of a, it really depends on the situation, whether some code should be one way or the other. So I do want to say that if you are looking to test accessibility, automated tools can definitely help, but you do need to plan to have a level of manual testing in there as well for various situations. And there's a lot of good articles out there. I don't want to get into that too much, but with WebdriverIO, there is I don't know if this got turned into a plugin. I think it did, the Axe, WebdriverIO Axe service. And what it will do is you load up the site that you're trying to test through WebdriverIO, and then you run this plugin, which will do a scan of the code, the HTML, the CSS on the site, and then give you a report of major issues it found, minor issues it found, and then things to be aware of. That's where that kind of manual review comes in. So that is a pretty good tool for doing that. I would say for the most part, the purpose of WebdriverIO in this instance is to allow you to get the page in a state that you want to run the tool in. It's not really there to be testing the accessibility itself. However, it is a good practice or a good test of the site to see if you can actually get to that page or not. If you're having issues getting to a specific page because of the code, the way the code's written, then there's a good chance that someone using a screen reader would also run into issues, or someone with a limited browser or something else could be facing those same type of issues. So just by trying to run your tests, trying to use your website through automation, it can expose some areas, especially like with form fields. If you're unable to automate a form field because the JavaScript is interfering with it, that could be an accessibility issue, or maybe not. Maybe it's just a test automation thing. Anyway, yeah, that's the Axe, A-X-E service. So take a look at that.
Yeah, I can second that. The X project is I think one of the most popular ones in the accessibility area, and the company behind, I think their name is DQ. They actually have a lot of folks that work at the W3C on the accessibility standards. So they are the folks that are most knowledgeable about accessibility in web, and so they move all this knowledge into that tool. So really recommend Xcor to do accessibility testing.
Yeah, and I'm going to shameless promote a plugin, but no, what is it? I think a few months ago, it was last year, Christian and I were in the US, and I got a customer asking us about, is there a way to also test kind of like the tab order in your page, also part of the accessibility testing that they needed to do. And what they were doing a tab based on the send keys and then verify the field. And they had a very complex script. And based on the blog post from Richard Vivek is his name, if I pronounce it correctly, I saw something about injecting a piece of JavaScript into the page, drawing a canvas, and kind of like walking through all the elements that could be tabbed and drawing lines. So I implemented such a thing in the visual comparison module, which you can also find in the WebdriverIO GitHub pages, where you can just say, create a full page screenshot of my page, do a tabbable search, and you will get kind of like all the dots and lines and see what your tabbable order will be when you would tab through your page. It's not 100% accurate, but for 99, I think you can get a good idea about the tabbable order of your page.
What's the name of that service again?
It's the
You muted.
Yeah, I muted myself. Sorry. It's the WDIO image comparison service.
Okay. Nice. Cool. So I got to take the next one from Dan. In light of the current trend to leverage the use of AI and ML verticals to improve software products, is there any chance we could see WDIO have an AI ML toolkit to allow users to write self-maintained checks, self-maintained visual regression checks? Question mark, or any other similar use case. So actually, I was recently in contact with a company that is doing AI and ML, and they have a platform where you can essentially just walk through a website, do your workflow, and this platform captures what you do. It says, navigate to page that, click on button X, enter this value into this input field. And usually I was like, so far I've been really skeptic about AI and ML in the testing space. I had machine learning in university, and I thought, well, I don't know how this is going to be applied to testing, because you cannot have a lot of false positives, right? You need to, how do you train your AI, your AI thing to get good results? So I kind of still skeptical, but this platform really has somehow convinced me that, because it's able to detect what you want to do. And so I can think about, and I was talking about how we can integrate this into WebdriverIO. It could look like in a way that you write cucumber test without having to write step definitions. And the platform will execute the test for you based on the cucumber feature description that are written in plain English, just from that. So you can check in your steps, what you want to do, and WebdriverIO will transform this, will send it to that platform and runs it from the platform. So that's something I'm looking into working on, and then we'll share the results as soon as I got them. So yeah, we're looking into that, but we will see how this will look like. Cool. What next? So I see one questions that are kind of like combined. One from Alexander, what's the plan for sync mode? And the other one from Luca, why should I use async mode instead of sync mode? So the sync mode we introduced because I feel like it's a great way to really keep the test code simple, especially with the amount of folks that move from Java frameworks to JavaScript. They usually have a difficult time to understand how promises work and how you can execute your steps in a synchronous way. And I feel like the synchronous mode, even though it requires you to have fibers installed or to support fibers on your platform, it makes it really simple. Unfortunately, the person who implemented or developed fibers has stepped away from the project. So we're currently like on the verge of being like, okay, what's going to be next? Can it be supported with the next Node.js upgrade? I hope it will. I hope it will work. It keeps working. If not, I will have to look into how I could make it work again, or maybe we get help from the original maintainer. But my goal is to keep sync mode away or alive as long as possible, because it really simplifies the usage of WebdriverIO. And why would you use async mode instead of sync mode? Well, there's, as I just mentioned, the chance that we cannot support sync mode anymore at some point. So then you would have to rewrite all your tests into promises, which can be a difficult undertaking. However, I'm pretty sure we can keep sync mode running for the next years. Therefore, there's no real reason why you should prefer the one over the other. However your development team feels like. If you have a team of proficient JavaScript engineers, they will feel comfortable writing asynchronous code, then go for the asynchronous mode. If you are fine with all these awaits and asyncs statements in there, whatever you prefer, there's no real. I just say sync mode is simpler and it makes the test easier to read, especially if you work with page objects. But it's at the end, there's no advantage from one over the other. It's just the way how you write tests. All right. Anyone prefers to take anyone next questions?
No, but I think I can ask a question to you. This is a question from Sami about what was the idea behind the WebdriverIO logo? Because I've been there since 2017 and Kevin a little bit longer, but I think you have the best experience with the logo. So
I actually don't. Originally at some point I wanted to create a website. Every open source project I don't know when it was, when we launched our first WebdriverIO website, I think might be somewhere in 2015. Every project had their website. So I asked a friend who I used to work with, he was a designer, who actually also designed the latest website, the version 7 documentation, so the latest documentation. He helped me with that as well. And so back then I was like, okay, man, I need a logo, I need a website, can you do that for me? And I thought he's not a techie or a programmer, so I explained to him what this project would do. So something with automation, and his association with automation was to create a robot. And then we just, we put it in orange, and that's the story behind it. There's nothing much. I really like, though, how the robot animates on the website these days. I feel I like that the most. But other than that, there's no personal connection to the robot. I eventually had the idea of getting a tattoo of the robot, but maybe when we reach 100,000 stars on GitHub.
Then you would have an orange carrot on your...
I will. So go nuts on the like button, I guess.
Yeah. It's now on YouTube, so...
I guess I will regret this at some point. Anyway.
Hey, can we use the open collective funding to fund the tattoo?
It's not in our policies. I guess I can make an amendment, but technically.
Cool.
Cool. There's Erin, do you have a question?
Yeah, I see some live questions coming in, and I saw something about API testing or the communication layer automation, and a related question about, is there a way to check for specific requests while doing end-to-end tests on the front end? And currently, this should be possible with Puppeteer or with the DevTools API, as we like to call it. And there's also a YAML service that I wrote, which you can use for this. I'm not sure if there's any other options that you guys know of. But you can always use tools like Chai request, for example, with which you can do some requests. I don't think that I don't see the use of doing API tests with WebdriverIO. WebdriverIO is an end-to-end test tool, so combining the tool doesn't make sense to me. But if you want, it is possible combining other tools with WebdriverIO if you really like to. And for most things, I think that the DevTools API provides most of your use cases.
Yep, totally. We recently with version 7 and version 6 started to integrate more into the Chrome DevTools protocol to allow, at least for local testing, and now with Selenium 4, even in the grid, to allow to do some network analytics and network testing. So we even have like a mocking and stubbing primitives that you can use to check if the browser has called a certain endpoint or a certain API, and you can write an assertion to expect that the browser has called that endpoint with a certain status code, a certain header, things like that. So yeah, that is something you can do with the network primitives. Maybe one question we take from the backlog, and something that you, Wim, mentioned that a lot of customers at SaaS ask. So me and Wim, we both work for SaaS Labs, and the usual question that comes up is WebdriverIO owned by SaaS Labs, or has SaaS Labs an impact on the roadmap of the project? So WebdriverIO is owned by the OpenJS Foundation. All the trademarks, all the code. If you make a pull request, you have to sign a CLA. That means that you kind of like give the the copyright of your code to the foundation, and with that, it is completely other properties, intellectual properties, are contributed to the OpenJS Foundation. So that means that technically, like the foundation owns the project, and companies like SaaS Labs, who are which customers heavily use WebdriverIO and are interested in the success of the project, they can contribute like any of the other companies in the world too. And we have specific contribution and governance policies that will determine how roadmaps can be changed. And right now, roadmap changes are defined by the technical steering committee, and to be part of the technical steering committee, you need a certain number of qualitative pull requests and contributions to the project. So if any company is interested in contributing to the project, they will be part of this technical steering committee group, and therefore can then also be part of deciding where the project has to be developed. So it's completely open sourced compared to some other projects in the space that are open source, but that are heavily baked by a company. And in this way, it is kind of more difficult to make changes to the roadmap because the company behind this project is interested in, steering it. And in the case of WebdriverIO, the governance is completely open and free. So everyone who participates in the project has the right to say and change the project direction. Do you think, Wim, that answers the question?
Yeah, it's almost the same story that I tell every customer.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm lucky or fortunate enough that kind of SaaS Labs pays me to work on WebdriverIO, which is why I, for instance, can also not access the collective because the policy in the collective is any development is not be allowed to be sponsored by a company, or if you get paid to contribute to WebdriverIO, you are not eligible to access the funding. And so yeah, SaaS Labs is a company that pays me to work for, pays me and Wim even as well to work on WebdriverIO, and so we are fortunate enough to do that. Yeah, let's see. We have 5 minutes left. Let's see. Let's take this close-up question and then see where we go from there. Maybe I could get everyone's of your opinion. So where do you like to see WebDriver in about 5 years from now? I'm sure there will be many major changes, but I would like to know most significant changes. I'm happy to start. So I think the biggest change and challenge we see within the next month and years will be the upgrade to the WebdriverIO to the WebDriver BiDi protocol. So the working group at the W3C who has standardized the WebDriver protocol is now working on a bidirectional protocol, which is kind of like, you can imagine, the version 2 of WebDriver. And with that, you will be able to do things that you currently see in other tools, for instance, Puppeteer, more access to network primitives and developer features that are interest for developers. And I think it's going to be really interesting to not only participate in that development, but also to bring this into WebdriverIO and wrap those primitives that we now get into nice features that makes it really easy to test against APIs, to test against network behavior of the browser, to make accessibility testing easier, and all the other things that come up. And we really like to get I would really be interested and curious about people that use WebdriverIO, what they're interested in. We had conversations about creating an IDE. I think you, Kevin, took a stab at this. I know that also Will created a Svelte GUI for an Electron app. So that is also part of the roadmap. And, we are open to suggestions to the roadmap and, see what you all interested in. What do you all think?
If I may go first, I think one of the biggest changes that we'll see, it's just a prediction, of course, but I think we'll see a movement away from mobile and more towards PWA applications, for which I think Appium and such will see a different future, maybe. I'm not sure, but it's just a prediction that I think everything will move to the web. And you'll use that same application as a native Android app, for example. So that's one prediction that I have that I think is very interesting.
Yeah, that's a good one. And I was more thinking not in a technical way of WebdriverIO, but I think where would you see WebdriverIO in about 5 years from now? I think it might be a project which is bigger than it is already. If you would look at other projects, I think that WebdriverIO is here the longest and made the biggest changes, and I think also the biggest impact on the market for multiple cross-browser, web, or for mobile Electron applications. So where do I see it in 5 years from now? Well, first of all, I hope we get those 100,000 stars, and then I would hope to see the
we all hope that.
No, but I think looking at kind of like the health of the project now, I believe that in 5 years the project could still be there, being a framework that you can rely on. So it's not looking at features itself, but just as a framework that if you're now as a company investing heavily in creating an automation framework that several teams will use, that WebdriverIO is a very good choice because of all the things that WebdriverIO supports and also the OpenJS Foundation support that we have. I think that makes a huge difference in comparison to all the other frameworks that are out there that might not have that OpenJS Foundation funded by different parties. So yeah, I think that will be, in my opinion, is also one of the biggest powers of WebdriverIO.
Yep, I'll add my thoughts on this. One thing I'd really like to see and am hoping to help out with is improving the way that debugging is done. I think that's one issue that I personally run into, and I see other people run into a lot, is WebdriverIO is great at writing really simple tests and being very functional. When those tests don't run the way that you're expecting them to, while there are some really great tools like the browser debug command, the REPL you can use as well, there's still, it still takes a little bit of time, especially if the error happens on CI/CD and that type of thing. So working on improving that level is something that I am personally interested in and something I'm hoping to contribute to. like was mentioned, the GUI is kind of a step towards that direction. Also having a kind of platform, WebdriverIO as a platform where you can kind of host your tests on a site and it runs everything for you and captures all the screenshots and kind of neatly packages all of it, I think would be really great to see in the future. So it's kind of my hopes there.
Cool. And to wrap up, I think something that I really wish for, and I'm working towards that, is like to increase the amount of contributors in our technical team, create a more diverse team that is part of the real world, and then, you know, create more initiatives around the project with more contributors. And so if you want to get involved, reach us out on Twitter, on Gitter. There are ways to contact us. There are many ways to contact us. With that, thank you all for joining our Q&A session. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will answer all the unanswered questions as part of a blog post over the next coming days. So stay tuned for that. And